Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast. I'm your host, Mark Hillary. This is a special edition for Christmas Eve 2021, so if you are celebrating Christmas this week, then settle back and enjoy this look back at 2021 and then forward into 2022. I'm going to be hosting this episode, along with my usual co-host, the analyst Peter Ryan. We're also joined by Alistair Niederer, the EMEA head of TTEC, and Paul O'Hara, the EMEA Senior Vice President for Business Development at Teleperformance. Both Alistair and Paul are based in the UK, and Peter is in Montreal, Canada. Okay, so let's hear some 2021 highlights and what all these CX industry leaders are looking forward to in 2022. Okay, guys, it's great to get you all on the podcast. This is going to be the episode that's coming out just before Christmas 2021. So we're sort of looking back at the CX world of 2021 and maybe forward a little bit into the future. So I think maybe what we can do just to kick off with is ask each of you in turn maybe how you saw the COVID recovery in 2021, because obviously 2020 was a disaster for most companies in the industry. Rapid pivot to work from home and new security arrangements and everything that had to happen. But clearly everyone at the beginning of this year was looking for a recovery. So how has the recovery taken place? And what do you see as some of the highlights of the year? Maybe let's go Peter, Paul, then Alistair.
Okay.
Well, Mark, thank you very much. And it's great to be with such an august panel of experts and really a discussion amongst friends as always. But if I was to denote how I saw 2021 from the perspective of CX, I would say there's been a lot of really good news stories. There's also been, I think, a lot of confusion in the market. I don't think that anybody anticipated what's being heralded as the Great Resignation. I don't think anybody anticipated that we were going to be dealing with these labor market issues to the extent that we're witnessing even towards the end of this year. 12 months ago. And I give a huge amount of credit to the individuals who are working in the CX space, who have been able to find good talent, who have been able to retain good talent, and who have put programs in the mix that are designed to try and hold on to the best people possible, because that's really what it's going to come down to. That being said, there's still a lot of confusion out there, and not just around the people management or the concern about the lack of willingness of people to get back into the workforce in key Western markets. I think also, and I'm sure that Alistair and Paul will have some views on this too, but the extent to which the perception of hybrid and how it was going to work was seen at the start of 2021 hasn't necessarily, I think, played out the way a lot of different organizations thought it would. There's a lot of people who have been caught out and are just making it up as they go along. And that's nobody's fault. That's just the way it goes. This is very much still a dynamic economy, a dynamic workplace environment that we're having to deal with as the pandemic moves into 2022. There's no formula that's been set out, whether it's for a private company, a government, or otherwise. And I think for me, one of the good news stories is the extent to which in 2021, we've seen a lot of organizations really find their mettle and be able to ensure the best possible interactions and the best possible experiences for their end users. It's not been easy, and it's very likely going to be a lot of confusion going into the next year too.
Okay, great. Let's switch over to Paul then.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very interesting year for sure, 2021. I'm not sure whether the dust's finally settled as well. I just look at what's happening now with Omicron and how fast things are changing with countries now red listed and travel restrictions being put in place. So we've seen a lot of things happen in 2021. Of course, now work is anywhere thanks to video conferencing and high-speed internet and other technologies. And this whole acceleration, acceptance, I'm going to call it, of work at home is here to stay. That's allowed us, Teleperformance, with our cloud campus concept, to tap into a much wider virtual labor pool. And it's created new opportunities for the industry, not just ourselves, but our competitors, of course. As many organizations have realized that they're not actually work at home ready, able to deploy and mobilize resources, technology, processes, etc. Of course, all companies, ourselves included, have had various challenges to address and overcome, thankfully, which we have. This is security, for instance, which does remain or has remained the main objection from buyers when it comes to an accepting of work at home, but also how to connect really remote workforces with the culture and values of the brand we represent. And that's taken a great deal of investment, time, and a lot of effort from our side to ensure that we're embracing that going forward. Of course, the world has befriended technology, and there will be no going back, as we know. So this is not just video calls and TV streaming, which we've seen a massive rise in. Popular food delivery apps have more than doubled their earnings last year. PayPal's reported that its fastest growing user group was people over the age of 50, which is kind of resonates with myself. Chase stated about half of its new online users were 50 plus as well. And certainly working with organizations that have opened up and talked openly about e-commerce being the single largest geography by 2025. So again, this is, we've seen real acceleration growth of several markets, not just gaming and streaming, last mile delivery, e-retail, and especially subject near and dear to my heart, which is direct to consumer. So this in turn has generated more digital content production, the boom of trust and safety needs, content moderation, know your customer, AI operations, data labeling, all that good stuff. And obviously, of course, opportunities for revenue generation, B2B sales in particular. So we see as an organization with the explosion of data, customer touch points, brands are facing new risks and hidden threats every day. So responsible data use, privacy, fraud prevention, and really stopping abuse are all core business imperatives. Every company's competitive advantage depends on meeting these objectives. So that's been a significant eye-opener for us, but also a huge business opportunity for us as well. And finally, in 2021, we've seen it, which really started in 2020, of course, but we've seen the COVID effect pushing government organizations to massively invest in citizens' health support. Not only has this generated significant short-term opportunities, support lines, test, track and trace services, etc., but also we see the generation of real long-term opportunities for the industry as governments continue to digitize their citizen support and, of course, looking to lower costs at the same time.
Okay, that's fantastic. And I always had you down as more of a TikTok challenge guy rather than Facebook anyway, Paul.
I don't believe everything that you see in the press.
Okay, Alistair, let's go to you and sort of explore how was 2021 and how did it develop on from the COVID year of 2020 then?
Well, thank you, Mark. And the good thing about going third is that I can just say ditto, particularly Paul's wonderfully comprehensive answer. And Peter, I think, the labor challenge is probably the foremost in most people's minds operationally, but it's not possible to predict what happens year on year. And I don't think any of us predicted in our industry that there would be so much growth. So our EMEA region grew 40%, 2021 on 2020. I think that we've seen by any measure of survey that the number of customer touch points has dramatically increased, yet the customer satisfaction has gone down. And I think one of the issues as we wrestle with this new world order is to find a way to reassemble the business by listening to customers and actually giving them what they need, as opposed to throwing technology to try to solve the problem. So we do have a lot more technology. We have less answers. We have poorer customer satisfaction. But I think what we are seeing as a trend year on year is that, we've moved to probably a 80-20 business model, work from home, and that ain't going anywhere fast. So some really serious changes, and probably easier to predict 2021, 2022, but certainly not for 2021 on 2020.
Okay, and so, why don't we carry it straight on then, so we can spin and do the reverse order and ask you, Alistair, then to continue and look at next year. So, given that you just said maybe it's easier to sort of predict how we're going to go from this year into 22, then what are the kind of trends or business experiences that you're having that you think will be important next year then?
Yeah, I think the most critical function of our business is to help people. What we would say is that, we like to combine people with technology to transform customer experience. And in that case, we've got to look at this and say, to my question or to my point earlier that says, it's incumbent on us to try to combine the people, process, technology to say we've got to deliver better customer service. We've got to deliver the channels and the effectiveness that people are asking for. And we've got to try to reduce that overall number of touch points, because that overall touch point reduction means that we're doing a better job in our customer service. So we all know anecdotally all of the issues around trying every avenue possible. And I think as we transition into next year, people will realize, we can't continue to provide all these channels and all this technology and achieve nothing, because it's not reducing our cost to serve. It's making people angrier. We need to look at how we deploy this and how we use that technology effectively. So I think it's going to be a year of taking stock, understanding where we are, getting around the problems of the labor market, but deploying technology to be utilized in a correct way and help us all out.
Is that really like the maturity then of the digital transformation wave? We saw everybody accelerating digital transformation because of COVID. Do you think that now we're starting to see a sort of maturity and better insight into what companies actually need?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in all businesses, the greatest enemy is probably silos in business. So you see that the people who are involved in this equation are right across from customer experience into IT. You've got to see an ability for companies to come together and understand what they're talking about as the value of their customer. But they've got to take those barriers down, and they've got to work together. And then they've got to go out to external organizations who understand all of these moving parts. And so you don't want to have a Frankenstein model of so many different providers of service, which in combination is inefficient.
Yeah. Paul, so what are you looking forward to then in 2022?
Oh, 2022. I can answer that, Mark, from both a personal and professional perspective. I think personally, I'm looking forward to traveling and holidaying again, dare I say, with my wife, moving to our new home and continuing to improve my golf handicap. I finally started to play again during the pandemic after a self-imposed 10-year retirement, I'm going to call it, due to overseas travel primarily. I think business-wise, I'm looking forward to connecting with I'm going to say old friends and colleagues once again, clients face-to-face, new people as well that managed to meet with remotely but not directly. Also looking forward to really seeing the continued development of hybrid working. I can't say too much, but look out for some exciting news and developments before the end of the year from Teleperformance regarding our virtual cloud shoring, cloud campus proposition. We'll be making some noise about that very, very soon, I suspect. Above all else, really looking forward to playing my part in enabling Teleperformance to continue to be nimble and responsive to this new post-COVID era, dare I call it that, of cooperation and integration, whereby we feel pretty much everything can be outsourced. So the global business world, as we see it, has never been so integrated. And I think the need to work together to address and solve key business and dare I say, humanitarian challenges has never been greater. So I do see exciting times ahead for Teleperformance as we continue to transform at pace from primarily a CX provider into the realms of business service organization and forging real close partnerships with organizations as we do so. And I think that's really, really exciting times for us in 2022, which will herald my 16th year anniversary with Teleperformance, believe it or not. And it's been a wonderful journey. I've seen a huge amount of evolution and a massive amount of adaptability, not more so than in the last 12 months.
Yeah, I think certainly on the point about travel, I think all of us would be interested in being able to travel relatively easily again. I know that in December, this month, I've actually got a trip to Europe planned, and I'm just hoping that goes ahead. Certainly the number of tests I've had to book make it, it's not a pleasant experience anymore. But Peter, let's shoot over to you then and just see like the sort of things that you're looking forward to next year then.
Well, I think there's going to be a number of different elements that I'll be looking forward to, or maybe not looking forward to, but looking out for. And one of them, I think, is really going to fall into the area of consolidation. The industry has been on a bit of a consolidation tear. There's been a lot of M&A activity going on of late. The most recent one is the purchase by Tech Mahindra of a company, Mark, that I know you know very well, Activist Connect, that's run by Minerva and Felix Serrano, and we're very delighted for them for that opportunity. But I do think that we're going to be seeing a lot more interesting activity when it comes to BPOs deciding that they want to expand maybe their areas of specialization, maybe their workstation count, maybe a geography that they're going to be in. There's a lot of interest right now in the outsourcing community looking to see what it can do in terms of growing its footprint in a variety of different ways. So certainly stay tuned on that front. Equally speaking, I think Alistair made a very good point when it comes down to the workplace and managing the labor market, managing the individuals that are going to fuel the interactions, whether it's voice or non-voice. And I think one of the things that I'll actually be looking forward to, and this is something I think there could be a lot of really cool stuff around, is the creativity that we're starting to see from the outsourcing community in terms of not just finding the best people, but keeping them. One of the things I've been really heartened by the last few months, at least, looking at many of the different firms I'm working with, is the extent to which they're starting to prioritize career path as a net benefit of working for their organization. Now, we can all agree a few years ago, the benefits that agents were having presented to them, we're going to give you a great healthcare plan, we're going to give you a subsidized canteen, we're going to give you free bus service to and from maybe even your residence. Now it's a case of we're going to help you grow as an individual. You're not just going to be presented with some ridiculous program about how if you work really hard over the next few years, you might become the CEO of the company. Now it's a case of we want to find out what your interests are. We want to be able to find out what you want to achieve personally. What are your intrinsic goals? What are your objectives in that way? And we want to help you meet them. That might mean somebody not becoming CEO, but moving up from the front lines to become a quality assurance inspector. It might mean somebody becoming an operations expert. That might mean somebody becoming the guru when it comes to internal communications. But the reality is now more outsourcers are trying to find a way to really put meat around the bones of the idea about helping people advance their own careers within an outsourcing organization. And that's a really net new, good news story that I don't think I've ever seen in the industry to the extent that we're witnessing it right now. And I expect that'll be something that we'll be seeing a tremendous amount of in 2022. And I think we can all agree, because the outsourcers can't afford not to. They've got to be able to find a way to keep the good talent in order to make sure that their business model is going to be viable.
Yeah, and I mean, given that Alistair's on here right now, I can say that I spoke to some of the TTEC guys working on the VW contract in the UK, and it really hit home this point that Peter's making, that the guys that are there working on the contract need to be real experts, and VW is not just VW. I think they've got 6 or 7 sub brands below that. So, they need to know everything about every different type of vehicle. And it was just incredibly impressive. You're talking about, people who really understand the product and the range of services being offered. And it's about as far away as you can get from the old idea of, minimum wage agents that are just reading out the script, So I think that's clearly going to be something for the future, definitely. So, that was a great look back and a look forward. Do any of you have any sort of final points to throw in? Anything that we might have forgotten to mention?
I think you touched on a very, very valid point, both Mark and Peter, about the whole human element, the human touch aspect, as we call it. So we know that the consumers today are really, really looking more meaningful connections with brands, and we are actually committed to capturing the hearts and minds, if you like, of the customers that we're representing on behalf of the brand. So this kind of whole need for connection is really given rise to authenticity, as we call it, which has become a business trend as we see it in its own right. So this is the whole purpose of fostering human connections. As humans, we like to see brands and business leaders, of course, really display the important human qualities. Yes, we know that technology is there as the enabler, but the human qualities, the empathy, the human touch, as we call it, honesty, reliability, compassion, humility, even a little bit of vulnerability here and now as well is absolutely fine. And this is really, really, really part and parcel of what we find, what we to be striving towards when it comes to creating meaningful connections with the customers of the brands that we represent as well. Absolutely with you 100% on that.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point. And I think, out of adversity comes opportunity. And to Peter's point, I've often said that where we have personalization in our customer interactions, we've always strived to have personalization of our most precious asset, which are the people that work for us. And I think that's what is a result of that, as we're looking at this precious asset and we're saying, let's treat every individual with their own skills, with their own support, with their own development, that we must nurture and grow as we expand the capability. And hopefully as what we offer in customer service, we move much more to the white glove, the personal treatment, which is great for a proportion of those contacts where people choose not to self-serve or go for automation. So I think that's something that really has come out of this, that the humanity around what we do is front and center.
Yeah, very good points that I think Paul and Alistair make. And I'll just make one comment to finish off here, Mark. I think we've learned our lesson from Omicron. We can't get too comfortable. This is a very dynamic atmosphere that we are living in. It's a very dynamic environment in which COVID is mutating and propagating. We cannot get in a situation where we think we're going to go back to business as usual, because just when you think things are getting back to normal, a big change comes about. I mean, as an example, I was in London with my two friends who were on the line here the other day at the European Call Center Awards just 2 weeks ago. I left on Thursday. Friday morning, they were announcing Omicron, and you just can't believe the extent to which things went from white to black in just a very short amount of time. You referenced the number of tests that are going to be required for travel. This is an industry built on global travel. And we have to realize that while things are infinitely better than they were perhaps 20 months ago, we're still not out of the woods yet. And the CX industry needs to take this into account. They need to realize that we are going to need to pivot. We're going to need to adapt in many, many situations going forward. And I think the key is going to be agility. I mean, I hate to use marketing buzzwords, but the reality is we're going to need to be, as an industry, as agile as possible. That will separate the companies in the BPO space that are going to succeed and are going to be long-term players versus ones that perhaps might run into some challenges.
Well, that's a great point to wrap up on. And I think that actually last year, it was either March or April, Stephen Lloyd was on this podcast, and he said you can expect at least 2 years of disruption to any customer service operation. So I think certainly what may have seemed too much of a prediction back then, but clearly it's all been playing out now, and we're seeing that's become a reality. So that's a great look back, great look forward to 2022. So thank you, everybody, and have a great holiday season.
Likewise.
Thank Merry you, Christmas.
Thanks, Peter. All the best to everybody. Bye for now.
Thanks for downloading the CX Files podcast. If you have a moment, please give us a star rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, because this really helps other people to find the podcast. If you have any suggestions for future guests, or ideas, people or topics, then please just find myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan on LinkedIn and send a suggestion.